Barak Tehawa, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rucha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Rucha Kodash. You've been in America too goddamn long. And this is a title that was thrown out by Elder Apostle Tahar probably about a week and a half ago or so. I don't really remember the name of the lesson that he did it on, but I did write that title down because it's a good title and it's true. You know, this is why you have even, you know, you have these so-called Christians, these Israelite Christians, you know, that are still riding, you know, ride or die for their master, Esau. You know, and by this point, you should figure out, you know, that these people do not have your best interests at heart, and they do not give a damn about you. You know, but we understand, you know, that Israel is blinded, and they're not going to get it. You know, but this whole, what you're looking at here is pretty much the idiot box television, and the swirl is a hypnotic spell cast by the puppet masters, the so-called elite. Because when you go back in history, what these devils did was they purchased all manner of media, whether it was radio, whether it was, you know, newspaper, magazines, whatever it was, eventually, you know, television. They bought it all out, so they control all of it. And that's what they did when they set up the CFR, which is the Council on Foreign Relations, which, as Myron Fagan put it, he said that that is the Illuminati of America, pretty much. You know, and this is how they have been able to manipulate people, is by what they call the idiot box. You know, the things that they put out there. You know, now when we look up this word hypnotized itself, right? Let's go back. It says hypnotized, to dazzle or overcome by, or as if by what? Suggestion. And what are suggestions? These are thoughts and ideas that are introduced to your mind, you know, by these individuals. This is why you have the television, you have these movies, you have these music videos, you have these commercials, and they are all highly suggestive. Also, within the videos, you have, you know, which is not seen to the naked eye, you have, you know, subliminal messages, certain shapes and things that they put in there, in the lettering, you know, in the portraits and pictures and things that they have within that, you know, whole commercial or movie. And what it does, it introduces these things or suggests these things into the psyche, you know, and they do it enough, and eventually people start moving in that direction, because they know that the best way to take over a nation or the world is not by force, military force or anything like that. It's by letting the people choose it. See? And this is what they've been doing, introducing it. It says a voice that hypnotizes its hearers. Drivers hypnotized by speed, you know, so on and so forth. It's to dazzle or overcome by, or as if by suggestion. Now, when we go to Revelation chapter 20, right? When we read from the first verse to the third verse, this is talking about Esau being taken out of power from the Roman Empire, because the Roman Empire was the last empire that the Edomites ruled when they were shut down. They ruled during the Greeks, then they ruled during the Romans, and then they were shut down for a period of time. That period of time was 1,000 years. And the reason why they were shut up for that 1,000-year period was that they should deceive the nations no more. But the thing that happened was, once that 1,000-year prophecy was fulfilled, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little season. And we're in that little season that they were loosed. Now when we scroll to the 7th verse, the very first thing that they did once they came out of that prison sentence, so to speak, was to deceive the whole world. It says, and when the 1,000, verse 7, Revelation 20:7, and when 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. Satan being the so-called white man. The word Satan just simply means adversary. It's not necessarily speaking about the spiritual demon Satan, even though the spiritual demon Satan is working with them on the left-hand side, which he works for the Most High anyway. That's one of the sons of the Most High. So what they did when they were loose out of the prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the 4 quarters of the earth. And this is exactly what they did. Now, they fell. They were dormant for 1,000 years. When they came back into power, what did they call it? The Renaissance. Why? Because they were dead and they were rebirthed. And this is why, as you read Revelation, the 13th chapter, which is a very heavy chapter, you know, it speaks about the falling and the revival of this ancient Roman Empire. And the very first thing they did was what? Deceive the world. This is why the Renaissance period was a period when Esau was going throughout all of Europe that was ruled by Jake at the time, and conquering those strongholds that Jake had, and then in turn taking all of the dark art that was put up and replace it and destroy it by putting their faces up. That's why Job 9:24 says the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? And the ones that they destroyed a lot of images. They destroyed a lot of statues. They destroyed a lot of frescoes and paintings and, wall, mosaics and all of that. But they couldn't destroy them all. And what they did was something called iconoclasm, which the term icon is image, and clasm is the defacing or the structure of an image. And they put themselves in there. This is why you have something called the Renaissance. Now, if you look at the pictures that were painted prior to the Renaissance, that was painted by Jake, and you see the iconoclasm that took place on those images, they appear to be white because they painted over them. But when you see that doggy stringy hair that Esau usually has, you'll see that it's fluffy and puffy, because they were painting that doggy stringy hair over afros. This is just my personal belief, because when you look at the Renaissance pictures, that doggy stringy hair is flat on the heads of those new paintings. But on those old paintings, they are fluffy because they painted over the afros. And this is my belief, like I said. All right. And then when they did that, the next step after they took over the world, deceived the world, was what? Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And eventually what they did, as they conquered and got a stronghold to push their agenda fully, which is the NWO, through America, then they started gathering all of these nations together for what? For war, for battle, for total domination, to get the people of the world so sick of wars and tyrants and all this stuff, so that they would accept this one world government. All right. So when we go to Revelation 13 and 1, it says, and I stood up upon the sand of the sea. This was the Apostle John, on the island of Patmos, looking into the sea. All right, you have the Mediterranean Sea, and you had the seas that were in that region of the island of Patmos, which were called the sporadic islands or the sporads. And those islands were pretty much a bunch of different islands where those that were considered to be the staunch enemies of the Roman Empire were abandoned to or sentenced to. This is why the Apostle John was on the island of Patmos, because by the time they put him there, it was treason. It was sedition to speak about the kingdom of heaven, to speak about things that outside of the Romans ruling. Talk about any other rulership outside of the Roman Empire rulership. So on that island, while he was working, the Lord gave him a series of visions. And these series of visions were a representation of what was going to take place in the last days. Because remember, they asked Yahushua, what is the sign of that coming of the end of the world? And he explained to them the things that would come. But the Apostle John was the only one that was given these visions here in the book of Revelation concerning this beast, the system, concerning his image, concerning his mark, concerning his number, concerning all of these things which none of the other apostles received. So it is impossible for the image or the mark of the beast to be anything else but what it is, because all of those other apostles died before any of this was even revealed. All right? It says, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea. So he actually saw an actual beast coming out of that sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And it actually had 7 heads and it had 10 horns. And upon his horns 10 crowns. And it actually had 10 crowns. And upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Because they say that they're the Most High, that they're Yahushua, that, they're the saviors, and so on and so forth. So he actually saw this in the form of a beast. But when you continue reading in Revelation, that particular beast was not an actual beast, although that's what he saw in his vision. That beast was a representation of an empire or empires of these Edomites. This is why it was called a red dragon or a scarlet colored beast, because Esau is red. All right, he is synonymous with red, with crimson, with crime. All right, so when we read Revelation 17 and 9, the angel was breaking it down to the Apostle John of what these 7 heads and 10 horns represent, just like the angel broke down to Daniel in the book of Daniel 7 what those 4 beasts represented. They were representations of empires, but in this case it's a representation of the Edomite empires, from the beginning of them, which was the Greeks, to the ending of them, which is America. So Revelation 17:9, and here's a mind which has wisdom. So you want to understand this? I'm going to break it down to you. The 7 heads are 7 mountains. Mountains sometimes represent actual mountains, but in other cases it represents, governments. In this case, it's speaking about governments. And how do we know that? Because as you read on, it says, on which the woman sitteth, the woman, which is a great city, that harlot, which is America, Babylon the Great, sits on top of these 7 heads, which is this union, this beast that is carrying the woman. And when you understand the policies of NATO, of the EU, which this is really dealing with the EU, but these are also NATO nations. America, although they are supposed to all be partners and have the equal say, they hold the sway over all of those other European nations. This is why she is hated. It says, and there are what? 7 kings, which pretty much represents 7 rulerships, which shows you that this is not talking about an actual mountain. And then when you look at the word government, you have governments, when they meet together, you have the G7, G8 summit. Summit is what? The top of a mountain. All right. Why do they call it that? Because that is the top of each government. That is the top of each country, which is governed by their government. All right. It says 5 are fallen, and 1 is. And the one that is was dealing with the Roman Empire that was in the time of John, the Apostle John, when he was having this vision. The 5 that were fallen were the Greeks, the French, the Spanish, Germania Major, and Germania Minor. The 1 is dealing with the Roman Empire. And the other is not yet come because it wasn't really time for Great Britain to really be a world empire at the time, although they had certain sway and rule back then. And this they will come back later. And when he has come, and they did come into power, he must continue what? A short space. Because they, although behind the scenes they're ruling, America knocked them off of that first place, because whoever pretty much has the world reserve currency, which is the trade in the monetary units of that country, pretty much is the head, the top. It says, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th. And this is dealing with America, because there are really 8 heads, but the 8th stems out of all other 7. And it's no coincidence that, okay, well, you're wrong because one of those heads is China and one of those heads is Africa and no, they're all so-called European nations, Edomite nations. It says, and is of the 7 and goeth into perdition, because once America was established, they were to be destroyed. So in this, what they did when they came back into power, they deceived the world, right? Had the name of blasphemy. And when we go back to Revelation 13:2, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. Now, why did it speak of a leopard? Because this goes back to the beginning origins of this particular beast, which represents the Greek Empire. And the feet were as the feet of a bear. Now, the feet of a bear is a representation of Russia. And although Russia is not a part of the 7, Russia is going to bring an end to this beast with her allies, including the allies of America that are part of the 10 horns. And his mouth as the mouth of a lion, and this mouth is speaking about England, because England is where they get their power from. In the book of Jeremiah, either 50 or 51, it speaks about your mother being, ashamed or confounded or something like that of you, or something along those lines. Well, that's because behind the scenes, through the city-state of London, the Rothschilds are governing America behind the scenes. America, to the public, to the spectators, was so-called freed from England, but really she was never freed from England. She's still a Commonwealth of England, but it's just not known. So they calling the shots behind the scenes, but it appears that America is free. So that's the mouth of a lion. And the dragon, right, which is what? The Roman Empire gave him his power. All right, because when America, and which is, Satan, of course, and the Roman Empire. All right, it says, and his seat and great authority, because they had great authority. When you look at all of the empires previous to the Roman Empire, they had rule, they had great vast kingdoms, but when the Romans took over, they took over the known world, and they conquered the whole of all of the coastlines of the Mediterranean Sea. And that was big time money right there. All right, today, America took over the same power, is ruling in the same fashion, and they have control of the whole entire world. Right? It says, and I saw one of his heads as they were wounded to death. This is dealing with the Roman Empire. They fell. The last ruler of the Edomites in the Roman Empire was Domitian, which was a part of the Flavian dynasty. You have Vespasian, which was a father, Titus, which was an older brother, Domitian, which was a younger brother. he fell roughly around 96 AD, around the same time when this vision was given to the Apostle John. From that point, Jake started ruling. But Jake ruled in the fashion of the ancient Roman Empire. So they were still pagan. It wasn't until around 325 AD that it went from being the pagan Roman Empire to the Holy Roman Empire with Constantine, which at the behest of his mother, he accepted Christianity as the religion of the kingdom, but he really was a sun worshiper, and he really wanted to get both the pagans and the Christians to pay homage to him so that he could make more money, of course. All right, so from that point on, it became known as a Holy Roman Empire, and that was around the time when you could start to count for the 1,000 years into the future. You know, and the Renaissance came in, you know, it started roughly around the early 1300s, but it really didn't take hold to the late 1300s into the 1400s, and especially by the mid 1400s. And when you look at, I believe that it was on Wikipedia, if I'm not mistaken, when it spoke about the Dark Ages lasted for about 1,000 years, and it said 1,000 years in there. So this is not, you know, something that somebody just pull out the air. These are facts. Now, the Spirit had it to where the men before us connected these dots, and it makes sense when you go back and you do the research, you do the history. All right. So it says, and I saw one of his heads as it was wounded to death. This goes back to the Roman Empire falling, and his deadly wound was healed. And that deadly wound was healed during the time of the Renaissance. And once they were healed during the time of the Renaissance, what happened? And all the world wondered after the beast, which is the ancient Roman Empire, up to date as the reincarnated Roman Empire, but being America. And this is why the apostle said, you know, you've been in America too goddamn long, because you've bought the bullshit that America is pushing. This is why you have these so-called black Christians, black pastors, even so-called black apologists still riding for Esau. You see? Because by this time, something in the back of your mind should have said, you know what, man, I don't know, man. This ain't right. You know, my people got effed up here, you know, and all nations that ever received that were oppressed and something was done to bad, genocide or whatever the case may be, they receive reparations. But when it comes to us, we get nothing. And even when we get so-called freed, we still have a hard way to go, because there's always another angle, whether it's putting Jake in prison to make them slaves because of the 13th Amendment, you know, or whatever the case may be, the Jim Crow laws or the sharecroppers. I mean, just in general. And I'm speaking about Judah because they are the head, and they get it the worst because they are the head. You know, the other tribes follow along in their footsteps, because the same thing happens to all of the indigenous people of the Americas, which are the 10 tribes, the Northern Kingdom. This is why the revolutionary Che Guevara, right, when you got something called, there's a movie called Motorcycle Diaries, and what it was, he wanted to become a doctor, and he was studying to become a doctor. And what he did, he lived in Argentina. He was really Argentinian. He really wasn't Cuban. He wasn't Cuban, B. Inside joke. And on his way up, I forget what actual part in South America, I think it was in the north, that he had to go to get more training. And as he drove his motorcycle through South America, he found the same thing each and every time, each and every town, each and every, you know, place that he went to, that the indigenous people were catching hell And each and every, it was the same thing over and over again. All of the indigenous people were catching hell everywhere he went. Why? Because they are the Israelites, and these are the curses. So by the time he got to his destination, his whole mindset changed. So that's why he became a revolutionary for that cause. Now, whether or not they got to him and brought him off later, I don't know. But this is how he came to that conclusion. So all of the tribes were catching hell. But the thing about it is that it is very well documented here in the U.S. This is why the other stuff is not really documented or put up in the forefront. This is why you have these only black Israelites talking about that only the so-called Negroes are the Israelites. And that's not the case. We're all the same family, and we've all been persecuted one way or the other. You know, just because our plight, you know, dealing with the Northern Kingdom isn't documented as much as the plight of the Southern Kingdom doesn't mean we're not suffering or have suffered as much as you had. You know? So all the world wondered after the beast. So, you know, so it should come to a point where, you know, you should consider that. And once you consider that, and you because like dealing with Pastor Mike, he is not a dummy. All right, he is not a dummy. He's far from being a dummy. He knows how to navigate the scriptures. He's been trained. You know, like Elder Pastor said, he believes he's sincere. You know, and I could ride with that. You know, because you do have those that have that sincerity in them. This is why in the book of Romans, the Apostle Paul spoke about that. Romans 10:1. It says, "Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to the Most High for Israel is that they might be saved." Because the Lord is only dealing with the Israelites, man. It says, "For I bear them record." Why does he bear them record? Because he was around them. He saw them moving. He saw the devotions that they had. You know, he saw, you know, them going to the temple and, you know, reading from the Torah and, you know, putting into practice, you know, the law, statutes, commandments, so on and so forth. It says that they have a zeal of the Most High, right? Meaning they have that jealousy, that fervent desire, you know, for the Lord, but not according to knowledge. This is why the Apostle John once again said, try the spirits, whether they are of the Most High or not. Because when you go into it and you bring out, you know, it's one thing to say something. Anybody can say anything off the top of the head. But it's another thing to go into the scriptures and actually bring it out. Bring it out, you know. And when you do that, Jake gets offended because the fear that they have to the Most High, or the knowledge that they have of the Most High, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, is taught by the precept of men. This is why you'll hear things like, if my pastor don't say that, I won't believe it. But then you's a fool. You're not just a fool, you's an old fool. Inside joke. You know, because you got to go back and check it. You know, I mean, it's one thing, you know, to have reverence for your teachers. That's a beautiful thing. Have honor, you know, reverence for your teachers. But you also have to go back and check to make sure that what's being said is correct. That way you're persuaded. Because nothing better than a teacher that is fully persuaded in their mind. And that's not going to happen by you just accepting whatever this individual says. You got to go back and fact check it. The scriptures say, study to show thyself approved, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Because once you studied, the Lord can put the Spirit on you and bring out all of the information that's in you at the appropriate time. All right, so they have that knowledge, or they have that zeal of the Most High, but not according to knowledge. For they being ignorant of the Most High's righteousness. And this is what's happening with, you know, Pastor Mike. He is ignorant of the righteousness of the Most High. And the thing about it is, He has the blueprint because he even said it. Well, so every time you look at the word stranger, that's talking about the Israelites. Yes, that's it. If the word stranger, if something beneficial is going to happen to a stranger, or they receiving land, or they receiving mercy, that is talking about the Israelites. But in the other hand, if it speaks about judgment and them going into captivity, that's talking about the other nations. So he has the formula, but he's still ignorant of the Most High's righteousness. Why? Because Pastor Mike has been in America too goddamn long, just like the rest of these Christians. And some of you Israelites that know that you're Israelites have been in America too goddamn long, because you are of the same mindset. Some of you are just a minuscule step above the Christians. Some of you have the same mindset as these so-called Christians. You have not changed from back then to now, except now you don't know that you know that you're an Israelite, and you may have a Hebrew name. It says, for they being ignorant of the Most High's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of the Most High. And that's that submission that they don't want to accept. Why? Because they're ignorant of the Most High's righteousness. So going back to Revelation 13:3, it says, and all the world wondered after the beast. So this is what? Let's look up this word wondered. Because they've been, hypnotized. They've been hypnotized by this beast. And what does the word hypnotize mean? To dazzle or overcome by, or as if by suggestion. Because remember, the thing that these devils do, like that sister was going into, I saw the priest Amawan Gabar, saw his video. Then I saw the elder Pastor also played the clip also in his video, which he saw it from both priests Amawan Gabar and the elder Manat Zakba, which I didn't see his video, and she was just breaking it down. And you could see that the spirit was on this woman. And pretty much she was saying that, look, when the system comes back online, they're not going to make you take anything. It's going to be you that have to accept it. You see? Which she's correct. And then after they get the majority of the world to get it, of course, you're going to have the ones that are going to get persecuted. But for the most part, it's going to be something that you take on your own. Now, she spoke about the grid going down, which there's a lot of talk of that going on lately. And then she also spoke about the grid coming back online. And then there was going to be a new system, which we've been talking about that for how long? Through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Now, when you go back to John Todd, those of you that are familiar with John Todd, I believe it was John Todd. I haven't been able to find it. Lord's will, I will be able to, because I got a whole bunch of files of John Todd, and I'm going to start, Lord's will, going back through it and listening to it, see if I could find that particular one. I believe it was him. He said that pretty much what they want to do is they want to have these blackouts, right? Which they did back in 1977. They had a blackout. I was actually living in New York, in the Bronx at the time when the blackouts happened back in 77. And he said that the so-called illuminated ones, through their agenda, they're going to say, well, once the lights go out for the last time in New York, we will have the world. And I'm still trying to find that clip. I know I heard it years ago. I believe that was John Todd. So, this is all a part of it. The reset, the great reset, the agenda, the New World Order, Agenda 2030, whatever you want to call it. They all have the same ultimate goals, whether it's the CFR, whether it's the WEF, whether it's NATO, whether it's the EU, whatever it is, the UN, whatever. They all have the same goal in mind, and that's to establish a so-called New World Order, which is going to be pretty much The many ruled by the few. And you think you have tyrannical governments now. When this system is in place, that's really going to be a real tyrannical government. All right? But the elect will be delivered and spared from all of this. You know? So going back, the word for wondered is taumazo, which we looked at it before. To wonder, wonder at, marvel. To be wondered at, to be had in admiration. So they're going to be caught up. And we get a little glimpse of this scripture-wise with the Apostle John. When he said he was like looking at this woman like, wow, in amazement. You know? So she must have been a looker. She must have been a looker. That hooker must have been a looker. You know, for him to have that sentiment. Right? Revelation 17:7. And the angel said unto me, wherefore didst thou marvel? No, I'm sorry. Let me read 6. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, which are the Israelites. You know, you had Gad, Reuben, Issachar, you know, Judah, you know, so on and so forth. It says, and with the blood of the martyrs of Yahushua, which are the prophets. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. The same word, taumazo. So he wondered at her with what great admiration. Matter of fact, let me go to this and we'll come back. Great admiration. Let's see what the word, see if it's together. No, megas is admiration, megas mulos. And then admiration is tauma, which is the root word to taumazo, which is a wonderful thing, a marvel, wonder, to wonder with great wonder, an example, exceedingly. Why? Because she had that alluring, seductive way about her. You know, this is the top hole. So the top hole got to do the top things. She got to dazzle, you know, and be dazzled and go above and beyond the other holes out there. And this is what America does, because she has to do things and present herself in a way that you have to pick her every time. She's on a lineup with others, you're always going to pick her. Why? Because she stands out above the rest. And this is what America is. Now, I've been telling you about, I haven't seen it yet, the documentary on Netflix with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he said when he came to this country, you know, he just had that thing in mind of that this is the greatest country in the world. And I can't remember exactly how he put it. He said, sure, they had their problems, and he named some of the problems. He said, but I didn't see that. Why? Because what he saw was what the other nations are given is that golden city, that beacon of light, that golden opportunity. So this is how they wandered after the beast. They're caught up in that spell. Matter of fact, let's look up the word spell. Matter of fact, let me see what spell hypnotized. Okay, now it's just spelling. Let me see spell meaning. No. Assholes. Definition. I'm not asking you to spell it. Dick's not. Salakia. I'm just thinking out loud. What the hell? Terrible. Spell. Write or name the letters that form a word in correct sentence. Be a sign or characteristic of. All right. Do you want to play that game? Let's play that game. Cast a spell. To use words thought to be magic, especially in order to have an effect on someone. Same thing as hypnotized. The old woman cast a spell on the prince and he turned into a frog. So to use words thought to be magic, especially in order to have an effect on someone. And what's the best way to do that? It's something called inculcate. Inculcate, I spelled it with the wrong. Inculcate, instill an attitude, idea, or habit by persistent instruction. So pretty much to inculcate someone is to impress upon the mind by constant repetition. And this is what they do. Repeat something over and over and over and over again. First, they'll throw it like as little hints to see how people react. Like, nah, man, what the hell, you know? And then they might introduce it a little more and introduce it a little more. And then when people start getting used to it, they keep pushing it more and more and more and more until finally it becomes accepted. Like if you notice, years ago, the Elder Apostle Gabar did a video on this. It was a shame for a man to be a Mo. He had to do that shit behind closed doors. Now it's totally open. But before, you wouldn't walk down the street, wouldn't walk past government buildings or different buildings or stores, and you have the rainbow flag out. Now it's everywhere on houses. You walk around the neighborhoods, you see those flags, the rainbow flag everywhere. Right now, I was walking this morning and I saw a big one, right, in this house, and the first thought that came to my mind was that movie V for Vendetta. And how for V for Vendetta, that chick, Natalie Portman, she actually was locked up by V, and she found this letter that this woman wrote, that she was a Mo, and she had relations with another woman, right? And what happened? The Gestapos or the police came and kicked their door down and took them away. So when I saw that and that movie came to mind, I was thinking, well, see, they're setting it up to when that time comes, these people that got that flag up, these are Moses, grab them up. Setting them up. Same thing with everything else. They remember, kata godeo, the accuser of thy brethren. They put everything in categories so they can know how to store it. Esau, that's how his brain works. He needs everything to be categorized. He doesn't operate in the Holy Spirit. He doesn't operate in the spirit of spirituality unless it's on the left-hand side. All right? So, to inculcate, pretty much to impress upon the mind by constant repetition. So that's why they wandered after the beast. And then Revelation 17:7, and the angel said unto me, wherefore didst thou marvel? So he pretty much cursed them out. The F you, getting all amazed and dazed by this woman. But this shows you that if it were possible, they would deceive the very elect. So you've been in America too goddamn long. I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and the 10 horns. All right? And we read what those mysteries were. Now, let's go from there to Jeremiah chapter 2. And we can end it here. Let's go to Jeremiah 2. I'm going to start at the 11th verse. Matter of fact, I'll start at 9. Wherefore I will yet plead with you, saith the Lord, and with your children's children will I plead. For pass over the isles of Kittim and see, and send unto Gedar, and consider diligently. These are different nations. One of them is an island. The other one is the son of Ishmael. And consider diligently, and see if there be such a thing. What thing? Hath the nation changed their gods, which are yet no gods? But my people have changed their glory for that which doth not profit. Right, because anything else that comes up, they'll ride with it. But when it comes to the Most High, they're willingly ignorant of the Most High's righteousness. Why? Because they've been blocked out of that. It says, be astonished, O ye heavens, at this, and be horribly afraid, be ye very desolate, saith the Lord. Yeah, because this is what caused us to fall. The nations didn't change their gods, but Israel did. And it says that my people doth not consider. So you don't even consider that who the Lord is. You don't even consider as to why you're in the conditions that you're in. This is why he said the ox knoweth his owner and the ass his master's crib, but my people doth not consider. You Israelites out there, when it comes to righteousness of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, you have not a clue. You've been here in America too goddamn long. It says, for my people have committed 2 evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters. And this is what keeps us constantly nourished and spiritually hydrated. You know, keeps our potassium levels up in the spirit. Inside joke. And hewed them out cisterns. Right, so these cisterns are what? To catch water. But these cisterns that they hewed out are the wrong cistern, broken cisterns. See, you fill it up and it empties out. Why? Because it's a broken vessel. All of these philosophies and the strange woman, they're all broken vessels. It says that can hold no water. Is Israel a servant? So the Lord is asking, is Israel a servant? You know, which technically no. We are the royal people of the Most High. But for the majority of Jake out here, they've been in America too goddamn long. Is he a homeborn slave? You know? And the answer to that is no, but Jake acts that way. Let's go to Isaiah 51. I believe it's 51. Yep. And let's start at 19. These two things are come unto thee. Who shall be sorry for thee? Desolation and destruction and the famine and the sword. By whom shall I comfort thee? Thy sons have fainted. They lie at the head of all the streets. Yep, because they've been in America too goddamn long. As a wild bull in a net. They are full of the fury of the Lord, the rebuke of thy power. And this is why Jake is killing each other in the streets, because it's a direct curse from the Most High upon them. You know, that's what you can't do. For the most part, the Lord has to tap into, especially these Jakes in the hood. He got to really tap into their spirit to move them, because they're pretty much like animals. It says, therefore hear now this, thou afflicted and drunken, but not with wine. Thus saith the Lord power, the Lord, and thy power that pleaded the cause of his people. Behold, I have taken out of thine hand the cup of trembling, right? Because he gave us what? The refreshing, which is this knowledge. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So that cup of trembling was what? Part of the curses is what? And there you shall have a trembling heart. You shall be vexed, you know, unto all that you put your hands forth unto to do. So the Lord said, I have taken out of thine hand the cup of trembling, and gave us what? The comforter. Even the dregs of the cup of my fury, thou shalt no more drink it again. And this is what we're letting Jake know. This is the refreshing, but they don't want it. It says, but I will put it into the hand of them that afflicted. This is another scripture that goes hand in hand with Deuteronomy 30:7, that the curses are going to come upon Esau. These afflictions are going to come upon Esau and the other nations. The oppression and everything that we've been subjected to is going to transfer. There's going to be a trading places event that's going to take place, which have said to thy soul, bow down. Right, and this is what they have said. Bow down. Why? Because to them, all we are is niggas, spigs, spooks, wetbacks, tontos, so on and so forth. Servants. We're not worthy of anything else in their sight but that. This is how they look at us. This is why in Jeremiah 2 we're reading, is Israel a homeborn a slave? That we may go over, and thou, you Israelites, has laid thy body as the ground. Why? Because you've been in America too goddamn long. You know, it says pray for your enemies. Yeah, that's talking about your own peoples. But you'll pray for the devil, but when it comes to your own people, you want to have them executed. You want to throw the book at them. You don't want to have no mercy on them. But when it comes to the devil, oh, you have all the mercy in the world. It says, and as the street to them that went over, right? And that's why in Jeremiah it says, is Israel a servant? 2:14. Is he a homeborn slave? Why is he spoiled? And why is he spoiled? Because the Most High gave us over to the hand of these devils for them to spoil us. Isaiah 42:22. But this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. What are these? These are these different churches, these different philosophies, these black conscious communities, these ways of thought, whether it's religious, whether it's political, so on and so forth, where Jake is caught up in a prison sentence of these things. They're under that spell, whether they're 5%ers or a senator or mayor or in the military or whatever. They are for a prey and none delivereth. See, you're being hunted. For a spoil, meaning for robbing, and none saith restore. Ain't no reparations for Jake. And all that shit they talking about reparations, you ain't gonna get that. Because let's say they do push it, as we've been saying, beginning with Elder Pastor, when they do push it, let's say if they do happen to give Jake some type of reparations, guess what? It's gonna come with the reset. You know, in the form of the UBI, Universal Basic Income, the micro CHIP, whatever the case may be. You know, but ultimately is the micro CHIP, which is the MOTB. Who among you will give ear to this? Who will hearken and hear for the time to come? Right, because these things came, this was a prophecy and it eventually came to pass. Who gave Jacob for a spoil and Israel to the robbers? Did not the Lord, Yahweh? He against whom we have sinned, and that's the reason why. That was the justification. But now he's going to come deliver us. That's why it says, comfort ye, my people. Tell Jerusalem that her warfare is accomplished. And now all of these things that we suffered are going to be transferred over to our enemies. You know, and you have to wake up. But if you're not a part of the elect, you're not going to wake up. For they would not walk in his ways, neither were they obedient unto his law. And this is why we found ourselves in a cursed position. Therefore he hath poured upon him the fury of his anger and the strength of battle. And it's coming even harder, because it said they shall be as madmen, sparing none. This is the last stretch, the final affliction of Israel, the time of Jacob's trouble, a time that had not been since there was a nation even to this time. And at that time shall that people be delivered, those that shall be found written in the book, meaning the elect. And it has set him on fire round about. Right. And that's how it is. It's like fire was everywhere. No, there's no escaping this. No escaping this. The inside joke. Yet he knew not. And it burned him. Right. So he didn't know. He didn't consider it. He got burned by it. He was all in that affliction. Sizzling. Oozing. Popping, and he still didn't know, and it doesn't consider. My people is foolish, they have not known me, yet he laid it not to heart. Right, so all these things coming upon you, and you're still not laying it to heart to seek your power. You've been in America too goddamn long. So Jeremiah 2:14, is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave? Why is he spoiled? You know, the young lions roared upon him. That's dealing with the other nations. You know, today you could apply this to Esau. And yelled, and they made his land waste. His cities are burned without inhabitants. Now jumping down to the 33rd verse, it says, why trimmest thou thy ways to seek love? Therefore hast thou also taught the wicked ones thy ways. Why? Because you've been in America too goddamn long. The word there is yatab, which is good. To be good, be pleasing, be well. Right, so you're breaking your neck to be pleasing and to be well for your enemies, and they don't give a good goddamn about you. It's all about making them feel good. The hell with your feelings, the hell with how you feel. So why trimmest thou thy ways to seek love? Therefore hast thou also taught the wicked ones thy ways. All right, so pretty much you've been in America too goddamn long. Only the elect are going to be sealed and delivered. And with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say shalom.